When you're in corporate America and you're the only one, you must have a champion. As a woman, you must have a champion. It's very rare that you are going to move without a champion. That is invaluable.
Welcome to Diagonal Media's podcast, The In Crowd, where we talk to people who are succeeding in the film, TV, media, and advertising world. And today we have our guest, Sekiya Dorsett. Thanks for being with us, Sekiya.
No worries. Succeeding in the world, more like flailing in the world, but
Well,
I'll take it.
yeah, well, I mean, I've got my notes here. Sekiya is a GLAAD award-winning filmmaker. Her first feature, 2017's The Revival Women in the World, went on tour across the United States with Black Lesbian poets and is distributed by Women Make Movies. In 2019, she directed a 4-episode documentary series, Stonewall 50, The Revolution, for NBC News and NBC Out. The series' deep dive into the historic uprising won a GLAAD Media Award, among others. Sekiya's films have screened at many film festivals, including Tribeca, Urbanworld, Frameline Film Fest, and Outfest, as well as the Brooklyn Museum.
And I want to just throw in New Fest for the New York folks.
New Fest. And her work has been featured in Huffington Post, BuzzFeed, Essence, and more, and she holds an MFA from Hunter College. So I was lucky enough to connect with Sekiya in, I think it was 2016 or 2017, where I was editing promos and Sekiya was producing and helping me out there.
Yeah, I was the editorial director at the time. I was grateful to work with you when I moved over to Scary Mommy. And I remembered you and your work ethic and that you were pleasant to be around for long periods of time. And you always had creative vision and just a good creative collaborator. And it was because of that connection with you that I was able to, one, move that project forward. We edited 3 episodes together. It went to Tribeca, which was great, and also went on to play a few other film festivals. And it's still floating around there. I mean, I want to publicly thank you because of your patience with us. We didn't have a lot of money. You deserve a lot of money, by the way. Like a lot, like stacks
Well,
of money.
thank you. You too.
And but you worked with us and you created a piece of work that we could all be proud of. And as an independent filmmaker, that is essential, that you connect with folks like yourself and others to really push your project forward.
What are you excited about working on right now?
The thing that I'm most excited about right now is Caribbean Queen, the film, which is a partnership with Caribbean Equality Project. That short film really puts on the map some of the challenges that LGBTQ plus Caribbeans have. And, we shot that final scene for the film during the Labor Day parade for West Indian Day Carnival in Brooklyn. At the time, we were doing an action for John T. Josiah Robinson, and he was killed in Grenada. And the case was not being investigated because they said, oh, whatever, a life lost. And he was gay. He was out. He was proud. He was living his life. And it's that spirit that our main character has and that we are trying to push forward. And so, this film is for Jonty. This film is for all LGBTQ plus Caribbeans across the diaspora. We want to make sure that folks are seen, are heard, and are celebrated. And I'm excited to bring that film to life. We are hopefully going to be premiering this summer. I just love that film so much. I love that actor, Ansi A. Rodriguez, has done a great job. Tiffany Amor Tejeda, our DP, the co-writer Carl O'Brien Williams. Shout out to Mohammed and the group at Caribbean Equality Project for partnering with us. It's been a phenomenal process. We took an apartment in Crown Heights and completely recreated it. Sophia Berger, who's actually my wife, is an incredible production designer and created an entire sewing room, curtains, artwork, the full gamut with bringing that project together. So I cannot wait for folks to see it on the big screen. It is amazing. And my editor, Amanda Morell, is working very hard on the pacing and the timing to really have that scene just sing.
So where can people find out more information about Caribbean Queen?
You could follow me on Instagram as well. That's where I post all of the different projects that I have. And that one is really like every single time I watch a cut of it, I'm like, oh, this is going to be so good. I can't wait for people to see this.
I want to hear from the beginning. Did you pick up a camera? What got you into filmmaking, and how do you think about yourself? Do you think about yourself as a filmmaker?
Well, in the Bahamas, my mother, she did not understand this, I don't think, or the effect it would have. We went to the video store on Fridays, and looked forward to that. My mother would come home, we'd go to the video store, we would get to choose one VHS per person, and that's how I kind of grew. So I didn't really know about things like persona and these sort of highfalutin art films. I knew about Disney films, I knew about standard Hollywood films. For some reason, Cornbread, Earl and Me is a film that I watched several times. I don't know why that is. Very sad story, by the way.
Haven't seen
Very
it. What,
sad
what's that
story.
one about?
It's about these two brothers, I believe, and the scene that's stuck with me is that it's pouring rain and they're playing basketball. And one of them has a bottle of orange soda. And I think one of them gets shot and the bottle of orange soda just falls in a dramatic fashion to the ground. And that plays in my mind just on random days. And so this idea of like the visual image for having power and impact kind of stuck with me in a way that I didn't quite understand until I could all unpack it once I got old enough. But she's the reason why I wanted to be a director, because I was always watching films, always watching every Friday.
That's awesome. So from a young age, you knew you wanted to be a director.
I would say I didn't know I wanted to be a director. I just knew I loved films and storytelling, and I think because the Bahamas at the time when I was growing up had a very restricted offering, because we didn't have satellite. Like rich people had satellite so they could see every single thing. We had the VHS store, and then we had Channel 13, and Channel 13 turned on at a certain time and turned off at a certain time.
Did that sort of, anticipation make it more special when you got to watch things?
Without a doubt. Number one, my mother was not to be played around with. So we were not watching television all day long, even on Saturdays, right? She was like a disciplinarian. So when we were able to turn on the television, it was something that was really worth it. And I remember seeing The Cosby Show and falling in love with, I guess, what I would come to know as a sitcom. But here was this Black family on television, and it was funny and it was poignant and it was something that really impacted me. But at the same time, I also got involved with soap operas because my mother was obsessed with soap operas. And the Bahamas has a very strict idea of when to put things on, and soap operas came on twice a day. It would come on at 3 o'clock, so I would get home and I would watch an Australian soap opera called Neighbours. I had to turn that off because I had to make sure I did do my homework. But Neighbors, I would watch. And then I would sometimes be up with her late at night and we'd be watching The Bold and the Beautiful. So I have a very wide range of, of programming, from films to soap operas to television shows. It ran the gamut.
Jump forward to when did you come to the States, and why? What
I
what made you
came,
make that move?
well, honestly, I think I knew I had to leave the Bahamas because one, I realized that I was a lesbian and I knew that I could not stay in the Bahamas. And I thought to myself, I remember my sister was away from me for a very long period of time. And the reason why she was away is because she went to college. And then after college, she went to another college. Then after college, she went to another college. And so I was like, wow, she's really away for a long period of time. Like, this college thing. And she would come back and tell me about college. And I was like, this college thing seems like it's really cool. I need to figure this out. And so I told my mother when I was about to graduate that I wanted to become a director. And she said, well, you don't have to go away to college for that. I know somebody that has a funeral home that you could connect with right away. And I was like, no, 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 no. Not a funeral director. She loved embalming. For some reason, she went to see and she thought I would also fall in love with this. Please don't reach out to me about embalmings. I do not want to be at the funeral home.
Oh my.
And she was like,
Uh,
no, there's no way I'm going to send you to school for film directing. You're not going to make any money with that. And I was like, shit, well, what else can I do? And I was like, oh, the computers are something new. I was like, maybe I can do something with computers. I said, Mom, I want to go to school for computer science. She was like, this is a great idea, honey. This is so wonderful. And so she made it possible that I would go to school for computer science.
wow. And you were
N-
going to Hunter for that?
no,
No.
I went from the Nassau, Bahamas to cold ass Minnesota,
Oh
which
my
was the biggest
goodness.
mistake of one's
I
life.
can't.
I don't know why I would do that, but I sure did. And I took computer science for 2 years. It was me, one black girl, and a sea of the nerdiest boys one could think of. And they were not helping me in the lab. They would come to the lab, there'd be 6 of them huddled around a computer, working on the homework. Nobody would talk to me, nobody would want to help. And so computer science is also a collaborative field. It is singular in some ways, but when it comes to problem solving and getting code and running code and testing code, that's a collaborative process. And I did not have it in computer science. And at the same time, I said to myself, I cannot stand Minnesota. I got to figure out how to get myself out of this place. And I called my mother on the phone and I said, I cannot do it anymore. I need to get out of this place. I was crying, I was bawling, I was hysterical. And she was like, well, what do you want to do? Come home? And I was like, oh my God, no, 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 this is not going well. Let me figure this out. So I looked up schools that did not need a portfolio. And that is when I found one school and I applied and I came to New York.
Oh my gosh. So I want to talk a little bit about community because you didn't have that community and you're looking for that community. And you talked about community when you're um, talking about filmmaking in general. Did you find that community in New York?
I did. I did find community in New York when I came here. I went to what is called a PWI, which is a predominantly white institution, but it did have a good population of black students that were from all walks of life: African, Caribbean, African American, Afro Latino, all of the very wide variety. And I found space in that. I also found championing the professors there. I ended up moving from Minnesota to coming to Hempstead, New York, so Nassau County. So I went from Nassau, Bahamas to Nassau County. And it was there that I found everything. I mean, I found who the person who's my best friend to this day. Well, 2 of them. I found my wife also on Long Island. Long Island, I owe you a little bit. Don't try and come for me right now. I don't have any money. And I found best friends and I found this department of film that really changed my life. I mean, 2 professors there, Christine Scazy and Shanti Thakur, who's no longer at the institution, but those professors changed my life. Uh, and again, going back to community, they surrounded me with the community that I needed. One, the critique I needed, which I know a lot of students don't like these days. Nobody understands critique. But they also provided me with the support I needed to produce the work and find what was the start of my voice. I still think I'm looking and finding that voice.
So were you making things in college? Were you making short films? What kind of stuff were you making?
I was making things in college, not enough. And that's something that I'm pushing for because right now I'm a professor at Hofstra University in the film department at the Lawrence Herbert School of Communication. But I wish I had made more work in college. The piece of work that changed my trajectory in college was with Professor Thakor because it was in an experimental film class where I got to break out of the narrative and make a piece of work that was deeply emotionally resonant with myself. And then for some reason she was like, you should submit this to a film festival. And I was like, oh, okay. I did not have a concept of what that was, a film festival. And I again went New York Film Festival.
Y-
Like students these days, there's Film Freeway. I mean, the amount of resources for getting your work out there is endless. And I found New Fest, the New York Film Festival, and there was an Oakland Black Film Festival at the time that no longer is there. And at the time, I submitted it, and that was the first festival that I ever got my film into. And that kind of started me thinking about a career as a filmmaker, as one that makes stories, puts things on film. And that was actually the first film that I made was 16 millimeter film. So this was an actual film. Like that was shot on film, and I submitted that to a film festival and it got in. And I was at the AMC theater. Number one, I had not been to the city that often. And so the fact that my film was showing at the AMC theater, which is, oh my goodness, it's full circle, right down the road, 34th and 8th, right? People actually showed up. There were other people in the short showcase. There was like a film festival poster. I was like, oh, this could be a thing. This could be a thing.
So that film getting into a festival, what did that do for your confidence? Did you feel like you made it? Like
At the time, I did feel like, oh my goodness, this is the thing. I mean, I didn't have a concept of film festival hierarchies. I didn't have a concept of industry, in quote, like that word. I didn't have a concept of what it meant to build a film career. So my wide-eyed, I got into a film festival, this is epic, this is amazing, my life is going to change, was pretty steadfast until my life didn't change.
right, because yeah, I mean, maybe for people who don't know, there are thousands of film festivals, and it's an achievement to get into any. It's hard to make anything. And so when you do get into a film festival, you're like, holy cow, this is awesome. My work is going to get seen. All these doors are going to open. I think we talked about this a little bit before. Filmmaking's a grind. So, you know, for young people who are making films, or maybe not even young people, for anybody who are making films, what's your advice for getting into a film festival? How much stock should you put in getting into film festivals? Would you
Mhm.
recommend it for your students? Do you recommend they get into film festivals?
When you create work, the goal is for the work to be seen. And a film festival is one of the many ways that that work can be seen. Film festivals, depending on how vigorous they are with PR and marketing, how well attended your segment, your session, your screening is by industry professionals, it could lead to other work. Film festivals is one of the many ways that you promote yourself as a filmmaker. You build your resume on film festivals, right? And you also, film festivals provide a way for you to connect with that word that's key in any regard, which is community. You connect with other filmmakers. If you are in a shorts program, you can connect with the other filmmakers within that shorts program. You connect with the programmers of film festivals. That is a very strong and key component to film festivals and sometimes to getting into film festivals. Film festivals would like to say sometimes that we look at every little piece of work and you would see them and they say, submit your film. We look at every last one. Um, some film festivals have tracking lists that they know what is coming out. Because film festivals are at their core a business, they have partnerships with production companies and have relationships with production companies and filmmakers that have shown previously, with filmmakers that they may have seen on certain type of lists, and they are looking to see what those filmmakers that they have relationships with and that are on lists that have been recommended by their peers are offering for the year, and they are looking to program the best possible program. Most film festivals are doing that. So, yes, I strongly suggest that you use Film Freeway and other tools and other platforms to find film festivals to submit your work, because I think the most rewarding thing about a film festival is audience feedback. And unfortunately, I have not been able to go to some of the international festivals that my film has gotten into. I've sent people that are a part of the film. Um, the folks went to Australia, some folks went to London, and then I get a DM that says, "Hey, I saw your film in insert the blank place, and it's so great. It connected with me because." And it's those types of interactions that really warm your heart. You feel like your work is connecting with the audience that it intends for. Sometimes if you go to the film festivals and it's a great audience, the Q&As are so wonderful to hear. Most times people are not asking a question at Q&As. They are making a comment.
Yeah.
Hi, I have a question. And then, it's a comment. But we appreciate them, especially sometimes, even if it's a challenging comment, you can have a conversation, right? That's the goal of making work. Or you can have the person that says it connected with me because, and you could also have that impact. So film festivals are integral part of getting out there, but not the only way. There's people that have made
Right.
careers just on YouTube alone, or private screenings, or just educational screenings. It really runs a gamut.
Right. And yeah, you talked about the Q&A and getting your work seen as being a huge goal. And I want to talk a little bit about your identity and how that has shaped your work. Do you think about your identity actively while you're making something, or do you think about the goal of the work, or do you think about the just the storytelling? Like, what do you think about? Because your work, you're trying to um, elevate voices. So, what are you thinking about when you make something?
I don't know for other people, but I speak solely for myself. As a Black lesbian immigrant woman, I cannot detach myself from my identity. I would like to do so. I don't think America would allow that to happen. When I turn on the television, when I go into spaces, I mean, even right now, I am the only. Yes, yes, we're looking at you, very handsome, bald headed white man. Um, but when I go into spaces, I am there. I and usually I am the only one. Um, we're still making firsts. We haven't gotten to the first Black lesbian Caribbean woman to receive as yet. We're gonna get there, but there's no way for me to detach myself from my identity. What is challenging, however, is that while I sit in this identity and I can experience other pieces of work, I mean, I watch Seinfeld, I watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, right? I can watch any type of work imaginable.
Right.
On the flip side, folks on the other side do not cross over to work, really. And that is the problem of creating work that can be nuanced. We still celebrate Barry Jenkins for creating Moonlight, which did somehow cross over in certain regards to folks. But I tell you, at the beginning of the semester, I asked my students who directed Moonlight, and people did not know that name, the director's name. Or I asked my students, have you seen Medicine for Melancholy? I'm a Barry Jenkins stan, by the way. They have not. I asked folks, have you seen Daughters of the Dust? Do you know who Julie Dash is? They do not know. But they do know who every single white filmmaker that exists. And the history of film for the 100 years that we have includes people of color. And so that's the challenge of creating work that is nuanced because folks are not open minded enough to see the work. So when we talk about Black lesbian work, the list is very short. I mean, I still think when it comes to, I will say this, when it comes to Black lesbian work that has been received by the masses, the list is short. The top of the top, for me personally, is Cheryl Dunier's Watermelon Woman, The Watermelon Woman, followed by Dee Reese's Pariah, Then we have Tina Mabry's Mississippi Damned. And then the list continues.
We'll get the full list
There is a
because
full
we
list.
need the list.
And this is just the narrative films. I'm not talking about documentary films, right? I'm just talking about narrative films. Those are the folks that have broken through. Dee Reese has a DGA award, is a DGA director. Cheryl Dunye is a DGA director, has broken in. Tina Mabry is a DGA director, has broken in. Those are the folks that have broken in and that have made films. But do you see how short that list is?
I do. I do.
The
But
list of Martin Scorsese films alone,
right.
the list of Spielberg films alone.
So
So
it
there's no separation.
right. So when you're looking to get something made, how does that happen? Because you
Can I
When-
be honest?
yes.
Can I be honest? The film that I'm making now, Caribbean Queen, every project that I have started on, I've started with my own funds.
Mhm.
That is the truth. And then I go and get funds from crowdfunding, which has been significant part of the work and trying to get funds for the work. I've not started a piece of work that has not been paid for by myself first and then crowdfunding as yet. That has not happened.
Speaking of NBC Universal, um, you mentioned there are people there who gave you an opportunity, or can you talk a little bit about how that worked with Stonewall 50?
First of all, I want to say that when I started NBC Universal, it was because of community. I was an intern working for a filmmaker whose name is Jennifer Fox. And one of the interns there was working at NBC at the time. They had moved on, they'd gotten a job. I was working in a small production company downtown on 27th Street, running the entire office, coming out of school, but making nothing. And she said she was leaving her job at NBC and that she would like to throw hats, resumes in the ring. And I threw my resume in the ring for that job, and I did not get the job. And I was devastated. 6 months went by, and then someone from NBC called me, the same person that interviewed me the 6 months before, and said, "We have another job. Can you come in for this interview?" And that is when I started my partnership, I would say, with NBC Universal. Learning there from just starting as a coordinator. At the time, I was a graphics coordinator. Then I became a production coordinator. And I went up the chain and up the chain, up the chain. And one person that was instrumental in that, when you're in corporate America and you're the only one, you must have a champion. As a woman, you must have a champion. It's very rare that you are going to move without a champion. Very rare. And folks champion other people all the time. As soon as they see them, they say, "Oh my God, the brilliance of this said person. Oh my goodness. I see myself in them." I remember when I was just XYZ like him. And let me move them forward. But you have to have a champion. You need someone that is there to, one, see the vision, see where you can go, and help you see that vision, and also critique you and give you the advice and the mentorship that's needed. That is invaluable. And at NBC Universal, it was Sandra Schroen, Arcanau, that really helped me move forward. It was challenging understanding how corporate America worked. When you're leaving college, you just don't have a concept of the politics in corporate America. You don't have a concept of sometimes what it takes. That's another thing that I want to impart to my students, right? Like the level of discipline and the level of professionalism that it takes. And you need someone to kind of help you craft that. And you become an entity because every single year in corporate America, you have a review. And every single year, you have to say what you've learned. And companies are very strategic around crafting these year-end reviews and what that looks like. So you need someone to really help you to figure out how you can, one, show your impact, how you can show your value to the organization. And those are the things that you aren't taught in college. And I think that's something that I'm trying to really hone with my students. And so having that champion very early really helped me to move forward. I was a production coordinator and I wanted to be a producer. And I knew I needed to get there somehow. I saw at the time before they wanted us to be in quote predators, which is producer editors. Producers would come in, they would write their scripts, they would get them approved, they would go out to post production houses, they would sit down. And I was like, I would really love to shadow a producer through one of these projects because it was promotional marketing, which is something, again, that's people don't even know about. There's a whole world of trailers. Every week there's an episodic. Someone has to make it. Maybe next will be ChatGPT or AI making it, but that's a whole other story.
Oh,
Oh, I know. Oof.
yeah. I mean, yeah.
Oof is
w-
correct.
We won't get it.
We
Get
won't
into
get
that
into
right
that right
now.
now. But I knew, I was like, this is cool. I see them, they come to the office and they leave. I was like, where are they going? And I shadowed a producer. At the time, Lori Moretz allowed me to shadow her. She was one of the most creative folks. And Christina Hendricks was also there. And also, she was a creative director. And I went in and I showed Christina my scripts. And she was like, well, I'm going to see if Lori can have you come to session with her. That was what it was called, editing session. And I went to this edit house and I was like, this is nice. You get to sit back on the couch. There's a guy with a monitor and he's doing it. He's gone editing and you'd say what you need. And then someone comes in and brings you a seltzer. And then there's the ordering of the lunch at 12. And then if you have to work overtime, there's ordering afterward. And, you say what you need and you're like, I'll be back. And you go away and you eat your lunch and you come back. That was the day. Like back in the day, being an editing, like that's all you could imagine. And I remember as a production coordinator, I would see the daily rate card and I was like, wow, this is where I need to be. This is where I need to be.
That's how. I mean, I want to talk about that a little bit because I was editing. You would I'd work on something for a bit. You'd come in the room. You'd say, "We need a reverse symbol," and it was more than that. But I think you were an awesome producer to work with
Thank you.
because you got what it took to make something compelling, and I had no idea what I was doing at the time.
Really?
Really, really. I faked that job very hard.
You did a great job.
And well, thank you. But I didn't when I left after working with you, I knew 10 times as much as I did when I started. So
So you also are writing me a check? I just want to
I just
clarify this.
yes, I'll
You're going to write me a check?
write it right back to you.
Thank you
Yes.
so much. All right. This check
Um
is just going to be circling for like 20 years here. A circling check.
yeah, I wanted to make sure I said that because it was awesome working with you on those. Getting back to Stonewall 50 and the partnership with NBC Universal. What was the process like for you was that your idea to make that and you brought it to NBC Universal, or how did Stonewall 50 come together?
Stonewall 50 was a collaborative effort. When I was at NBC Universal, I was a part of the ERG, the Employee Resource Group, and I had partnered at that time to program for that group with Brooke Sapelza. And Brooke Sapelza, who's still at NBC Universal, at NBC Out, Stonewall 50 was coming up. And, I think we had gone to catch up drink or something, and we were talking about, oh, Stonewall 50 is coming up. I wonder what we can do. Da da da. And I was like, you know what? Why don't you all make a documentary? And she was like, yeah, that would be great. We should pitch it. We should come up with this idea. We should come up with a production plan, and we would pitch it. And she was like, well, where are we going to get the money from? And she was like, well, maybe we can go to NBC News. At the time, we pitched Stonewall 50, The Revolution, to Wesley at NBC News. And then we had to pitch that to Yvette Miley, who was in charge of all things at NBC News. And that set us on the trajectory to start that process. And it was supposed to be a short. It was not supposed to be a 4-part series, and extended to the 4-part series. And then I just could not stop because it was the breakneck speed. And the more I dived deeper into it, the more I connected with people, the more it expanded. And then I just remember it was like right at the moment we finished it, we put it out there. We had a huge, big premiere at Comcast. The president of Comcast came to that and presented at it. And it was such a great moment. And I mean, since then, we've been really proud of that work together. We won the GLAD Award. We won a journalism award for it. It's just been great to see that work blossom and flourish.
That's awesome. And so what's so interesting to me is how you get anything made. It's just hard to make content at all. And it sounds like, I mean, you're a jack of all trades. You know how to do the production coordinating, you know how to do the editing, you know how to film. So how important is all of that in convincing people to give you money?
I have to say, as as this industry rockets to AI, folks that have tangible skills will be able to talk to the AI. If you know what a 50 millimeter lens does versus an 85 millimeter lens versus a macro lens, if you understand the concept of mood, tone, if you understand how the edit is, what a jump cut is, what a match cut is, we're going to start talking in text. And so you really knowing the ins and outs of every part of the process is really going to help you. One, you find jobs faster when you know parts of the process. When you join a team, you can talk to intelligently to every member of the team. You can talk to the DP. You can talk about contrast. You could talk about fall off. You could talk in those terms that that person understands. And so you cut down a lot of the communication breakdown that may occur. Same thing. If you understand audio, even if you had one Pro Tools lesson or course, you understand treble, bass, what you want to hear from the left side to the right side, how you can talk about mixing. You need to understand that as a filmmaker to have a comprehensive knowledge. Filmmaking is the visual medium, it's the audio medium, and it's all the stuff between the lens. It's mise en scène. You need to know how to talk intelligently about all of the things if you're going to make a great project. And that has helped me, one, with pitching projects because people understand I know what I'm talking about. That's helped me with financing projects because I know what I need. I know the whole scope of the project, 360 degrees. So I think getting a lesson and the depth of that lesson is essential. And so I really am enjoying the work, talking to students, really helping them to understand that you have to have a deep understanding of all parts of this process.
And I love that you were talking about how to kind of move in corporate America and ex- talking to we talk about communication all the time at Diagonal. It's such an integral component of making something. It's not just uploading an edit and sending it, sending somebody a link and say, "Hey, check this out." It's, "Hey, here's what you're going to see here. Here's what we're working on. Now that we watched this version, here's what we think should happen next." Um, so yeah, can you talk a little bit about communication?
Without a doubt, one of the things I've learned throughout the course, and I think I'm still learning, is this aspect of clear, concise communication. The concise part is the part that I'm struggling with because sometimes I think I over communicate. But clear, concise communication does not leave holes for interpretation. And that's another thing that's important on a film set. If you go over to the DP and say, hey, you know, it's too dark, and that's all you say, which part of the image are you referring to? Is it this particular talent? You have to have full communication. You have to have that comprehensive outlook. So communication is essential. But I also want to pick up the most important thing that I learned throughout this process. I'm still profoundly impacted by folks that were not aligned with my goals, my vision, my dreams. And in this industry, the most important thing that you can do is find people of integrity that you can work with, that you can trust, that trust your vision, that you can collaborate with. That is going to pay dividends to you in the end. Because, one of the things that I look forward to is the bandwidth and the resources to hire just the people that I want to work with, so that I can work with just those people, and that we can build a core team where we have a shorthand of communication. When you listen, I listened to the Deakins podcast. Roger Deakins has so precise a team that he has the person that he uses for Dolly, and he has two people that he uses for Dolly, and he knows that he can trust those two people. He knows that he can trust the AC. He has that one or two people that's on the list, and he has his core team. And that is, I think, what I'm looking forward to, is in building this core team.
It's a dream to work with people that you enjoy working with. And then there's people who have integrity who also might have a different vision than you that
Yes.
you respect. So how do you work in those situations where maybe there's somebody above you or somebody who doesn't agree with you? What do you do in those sort of challenging situations?
I think, the word agreement is something that is not the problem. You don't want a bunch of yes people around you. That's actually going to yield another really sad project with no depth. You want people around you that have the vision. When your visions don't align, you need to figure out how you can communicate effectively so that there can be some sort of compromise. And it comes down to power dynamic, right? My boss used to say, I've had some great bosses. This one came from Roger. Oh my God, I can't remember his last name. Number one, his famous line to us always was, "Don't fuck it up." We would walk out of his office with notes, and he would say, "Okay, now don't fuck it up." He was this huge man. I think he was almost like 6'8", huge, broad shoulders. When he came down the hallway, he had this presence to him, and he'd be like, "How's it going?" And he went over. He's like, "I don't like it." And then he'd give us a critique, and he'd walk away. And he'd be like, "Don't fuck it up." But he was a guy with, like, he had integrity. He would tell you, "Listen, I don't know, this project, you're killing it," or he'd be like, "This project, I don't know, you got to do something." He would just serve it to you straight, but he did it in a way where it wasn't underhanded. He was very upfront with you. He really just, and if something wasn't working, he was like, "We got to talk about it. Let's talk about it. How can we make it better?" If we had an idea, he was all about building on ideas. We actually ended up, when I left, he actually ended up leaving NBC at one point, and he started up this group, this chain, and we would just send each other creative things we would see in terms of promotion space, marketing space, key art, etc. And we just respected him as a person because he never was underhanded. He was always straightforward. He was very creative. He encouraged us to be creative, and he encouraged us to work together. So you want to have folks on the team that have a vision and that one communicates straightforward, so that you can have those conversations and you can be creative. And if you find that that is always a sticking point, then you have to figure out, if it's your boss, what style can you what is their style of communication? How do they want things? How can you present it to them in the way that they need? And that is how you can move forward. If the power dynamics switch, then the question is, how can you shift this team to make sure that you bring someone on that's aligned? So it really depends. Power dynamics depends on if you have to adjust your style or if someone needs to adjust their style.
Right. Right. Sometimes you're working with somebody who asserts themselves and you need to go their way, and sometimes you discover that they were right, and that's great. Sometimes you think you're still right and you just need to move on. But um you mentioned somebody told you this phrase, one for the real, one for the meal, and that has now stuck with me, because yeah, sometimes you have to.
That was Roger. Roger would say, we would come to him, and, he would receive feedback from the president, and we would be inside his office, and, he was very open to us coming back and, pushing back, and he'd be like, "Listen, Sekiya, I don't know what to tell you. but you know how it is. One for the real, one for the meal. And I'd be like, okay, Roger. He was like, listen. He was like, you could totally put that shot in if you want to. I agree with you. That shot looks good. Like, I agree with you. That bite sounds good. He was like, just make that one for your reel. He's like, when you go to mix that one too. Put that on your reel. He was like, and this is the one we're gonna send to them. And I was like, you know what, Roger, you're right. And and I think that was his philosophy. He was obsessed with creating key art. He would have so many rounds of key art. And for himself, he would probably do the same thing. Was like, this is the key art that I want to present as my exploration, and this is the one that they chose, and that's okay. And I think it is okay, right? When you work underneath a boss that is just upfront with you, and you realize, my other boss, Sandra, used to say, it is our job to make our boss look good. If we're making our boss look good, we're doing a great job. And so some days we would come in and she'd be like, you know what, I don't know. We're not making the boss look great today. And I'd be like, oh my God, what happened? And she was like, well, we're going over budget on such and such, and we need to figure out how to pull it in. And I was like, okay, let's figure out how to do that and make notes, da, 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 and we'd go back and crunch the numbers. Like, that's the things that you have to do. There are rules to this, to engagement when it comes to corporate America. And I think once you understand them, you can really move up the ladder. And also, you can find allies. You know, everyone is there um, trying to do the best they can. And once you realize that, I think you shift focus. I tell folks, this is not your art project. When you go into the corporate America, this is not your art project. You're not making an art for yourself. You could do that at home. When you go into corporate America, the goal is to meet the needs of the company and to find out how you can add value to the company and how you can work well with others and also promote your team and amplify the work that your team is doing. That's another thing. Once you become a leader, it's all about making sure that the folks underneath you, right, that are working beside you really, are amplified. You want to move them forward. You want to be able to say, well, look, this person started off, look what they did. Well, yeah, no, they came up with this idea. When you present your ideas, those are key things.
I couldn't have said it better myself, so I won't. You are certainly a member of the in crowd. So yeah, thanks for sharing all the stories and your insight.
Thank you for the work that you all do here. It's imperative that we continue talking through the process and demystifying the process for those that are coming up. I wish there was a corporate America handbook that we could create that people would be able to, and even in business, right? I mean, running your own business, what does that look like to pitch work? What does that look like to keep a client happy? What does that look like to have them continually coming back? And then what does it look like to get a strong business contract so you get paid on time?
We are working on that handbook. It is not, yeah.
Maybe it could be the in crowd handbook. By the way, if you take that, I need a check.
Okay. Absolutely.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
Thanks, Sekiya.
All right, all the best.